Stand by for signal.
Alien intelligence watches us.
He's on his way to Mars.
Now if you'll sit back in your chairs, relax, relax, relax. Our minds merge slowly.
It was a warning from the other planets.
Plan Z, a triumph of scientific achievement.
You ask too many questions. Dismiss everything from your mind.
Fearlessly go where no podcast has gone before. The Naked Truth Revealed with Mark Easter.
Greetings, citizens of Earth and travelers from afar. My name is Mark Easter, and this is The Naked Truth Revealed. I have always been interested in the subject of cattle mutilations, and I've wanted to know why this phenomenon is happening worldwide. In 2006, I was fortunate enough to sit down with investigative journalist Moulton Howe to discuss her experience with the subject of animal mutilations and their relationship with UFOs. I wanted to know Linda's background in journalism, so we started from the beginning.
I have always been a TV producer and investigative reporter of science, medicine, and the environment. That's my beat, always has been. And when I graduated from Stanford, it was with a master's degree in communication, where I made for 2 years, I made documentaries with the Stanford Medical Center, the Stanford Linear Accelerator. I'm hired to be a street news reporter at KNBC in LA. And from being a reporter, I was hired by the documentary unit at KNBC, and we worked on an environmental issue. And then I was given the job of producing a live studio program that I did for 3 years, and it was environment, scientific breakthroughs, political issues. And the jump cuts are, my husband then went to Harvard to get his MBA. I get hired to produce all the medical programming for the ABC station in Boston. He gets hired to a company working for Time Inc. that was based in Denver. I get hired to be director of special projects at the CBS station. So I went NBC, ABC, CBS. And by 1979, the fall of 79, I've been an active professional television producer for 11 years. And had, I had every journalistic award you can think of, from Regional Emmys, Writing Awards, National Emmy nomination, all of it.
Linda was enjoying great success as a broadcast journalist, but in 1979, events of high strangeness were happening that led Linda down the rabbit hole of UFOs and the phenomenon known as cattle mutilation.
By the fall of 79, when animal mutilations were occurring all over Colorado, all over the United States, Canada, in the job that I had, investigate environment, medical issues, what's going on with these animals. And in the beginning, I thought I was getting into a contamination story, and the government, for some unknown, bizarre reason, was taking tissue from animals and leaving them in the environment. Well, that working hypothesis was gone in 1 month with my first interviews with law enforcement. It was law enforcement. They wouldn't talk in front of a camera. But they said, Linda, we're not dealing with predator, we're not dealing with disease, we're not dealing with satanic cult, we're dealing with creatures from outer space.
Creatures from outer space? And the local law enforcement admitted this to a news reporter? I imagine that was not the answer she expected, so I wanted to know how that made her feel.
Oh, it was a shock of cold water. And by the time that the crew and I started on it was a month We traveled in Wyoming and Colorado and New Mexico. And I was literally, it was like an ethnographic film. There was no way to plan outside of my being on the phone, setting up interviews based on events and interviews. And we traveled for an entire month as a crew, bouncing from mutilation site to mutilation site, ranchers with discs coming over ridges, going to talk with reporters who had seen these craft over pastures from the mutilated animals, all of it. And it was finally down in Trinidad, Colorado, when Lou Girotto, who was the chief investigator for the DA's office, his assignment was to investigate animal mutilations, which were happening all over the southern Colorado. And by then, we had, I think we had been on the road for 2 weeks. And I was in this mantra of asking everybody, who or what do you think is killing and mutilating these animals? That was my question. And the camera is running. It's 10 o'clock at night. It was the only time we could get with this man. And he looks at me and he says, well, other investigators and I have come to the conclusion we're dealing with creatures from outer space. And he says it on camera and keeps going about why, disappearing helicopters, orange lights, things they had seen. This was the first on-camera detail that all of the other law enforcement had been telling me off the record. And that was pivotal because he was greatly respected and he called the facts the facts. And after that, I had other interviews with people who had either seen animals in beams of light or had seen beams of light come down in their pasture. And by 9 months, it was a 9-month production, there was no question in my mind that I was dealing in a story in which the law enforcement investigators of a mind was that we were dealing with extraterrestrial entities that were mutilating animals. The question was why.
Since the UFO incident in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 and beyond, our governments and the military have cited national security as the reason why the public should not know about the problem of UFOs. In 1952, at the height of UFO sightings across America and around the globe, the CIA enlisted the Robertson Panel to look into the UFO problem and to downplay the public interest in UFOs by any means possible. Making fun of the witness has always been the norm. Why report something unbelievable when you will be made fun of by your employer and your peers and family? The media, and law enforcement especially, have always been afraid of ridicule, which was the intent of the CIA's directive for secrecy. So to hear that the local 5-0 would admit to a reporter from a major news station that the culprit of these mutilations of animals was actually creatures from outer space?
The policy of silence, like the federal government has on the subject, is endemic in sheriff's offices. And to some degree, the two are tied. If you're in a country that for 60 years, from the president and other executives on down, have made a solid cement wall that says, we have a national security interest. We don't want people to panic. We want to maintain military superiority on this planet with our human enemies. We do not want to rock the churches, the stock market. And they have this very, very firm policy of denial. It's going to affect every other level of government agency down to sheriffs. And I know this for a fact because in 1980, there was a guy named Rorvik who wrote an article for Penthouse magazine about how the animal mutilations had been proved by Kenneth Rommel, a former FBI agent, to be nothing but predator. The article was preposterous, and Kenneth Rommel clearly had an agenda. I interviewed Rommel. And as I sat down across from his desk with the crew setting up, a man who was given $119,000 of federal money to investigate animal mutilations in, there it was northern New Mexico. And his first sentence to me was, I'm going to prove that these animal mutilations are nothing but predator. And at that moment, a reporter, oh, I see, I'm not sitting down for an open-ended discussion with an open-minded law enforcement officer. He's already got a political bias. That's what I call a political bias. He's going to prove, instead of the money is supposed to be for an open investigation. So you combine that Kenneth Rommel had a political agenda. Penthouse magazine publishes that political agenda. And why I'm telling you that is that part of the argument that Rommel made and Penthouse magazine made, because Rommel made it, was that a sheriff in Benton County in Arkansas had put up a star scope, that they paid a rancher for a cow, put it out there, watched as natural predators came and made these excisions in the cow, and this was part of the big argument. Case closed. This proves all animal mutilations are predator. Okay, so that's 1980, 79 to 80, because I interviewed Rommel in October of 1979. Now jump to 5 years ago in 2001. That's 70, 80, it's 20 some years later. I get a call from a researcher in Florida and says, Linda, do you remember when Rorvik and Rommel and Penthouse and the animal mutilations and the star scope in Benton County, Arkansas? Well, I have met the veterinarian who was actually analyzing animal mutilations for the Benton County Sheriff's Office, and he has a completely different story, and I think you ought to talk to him. So I am now telling you that firsthand, 5 years ago in 2001, I got to talk with the veterinarian that the Sheriff's Office actually paid to do necropsies. And he said at exactly the time that they did the theatrical production of the Star Scope and the Predators, and that's what he called it, that he was reporting to the same sheriff that he was opening up mutilated animals and finding the bladder had been excised with no excision, that trachea and esophagus were missing with no viable surgical excision, heart missing with the pericardium left intact, which has been reported many times. He said, I was seeing sophisticated surgery and no blood. And he said those were the reports that went to the Benton County Sheriff's Office. The question is, did the Benton County Sheriff's Office act independently with a cover story and knew it deliberately? Or did somebody in the federal government go to the Benton County Sheriff and say, you're going to do this? We want this subject deep-sixed. We want this dismissed as predators, and if you're a patriot, you're going to do this. And my guess is it's the latter. But it's a lie. It's a total lie.
At this time, was Linda aware of this UFO connection?
No, I was trying to get to the bottom of what was happening to the animals. It was law enforcement. I had no connection to anything having to do with extraterrestrials or UFOs, not even in the first month of starting the research. As I said, thought I was in a government contamination story. It's law enforcement. They're the ones who said, Linda, we're dealing with creatures from outer space.
I wanted to know why Linda has such passion for covering this topic.
Because that is, I think, where people are the most hungry for information. If there is, in fact, another life form interacting with our planet, and we have governments that are saying it doesn't exist, then there must be something highly serious that those governments know, that they don't want the public to know. And as an investigator in journalism in a country that is supposed to be a democracy, I have always found this to be the most troubling part of this. It's not the extraterrestrials that bother me. It is that a government, in some inexplicable way that is supposed to be based on democratic constitutional ideals in which the taxpayers are supporting the government that's supposed to be elected, to represent those taxpayers. Suddenly it turns upside down, and we have an elite crew that say they're the only ones capable of absorbing the information about extraterrestrials mutilating animals. And now we're living in a repressive time, becoming ever more repressive, by a government that's made in every way, shape, and form that lying to go into a war is justified, let alone keeping the extraterrestrial biological entity complex phenomena away from everybody in the world for the foreseeable future. That doesn't compute to me as being viable as long as I am still an American. I think something has to change radically, and the government does not want it to change. Therefore, the whole investigation of everything related to the UFO phenomenon is a problem to the government. That is why I have persisted.
With as much time and resources Linda has spent on the subject, I wanted Linda's opinion on why she thinks cattle mutilations are happening.
When I started doing what became A Strange Harvest, the documentary, first the question was always who or what is killing and mutilating animals? And I get from law enforcement, it's creatures from outer space. Well, as soon as you start hearing that repeated, what follows is, well, why? And this is what I want to do. Why? Why would extraterrestrials be mutilating animals worldwide? Why would a non-human intelligence be taking people up in beams of light into craft and subjecting them to all kinds of examinations, but returning the people? The animals are returned dead and mutilated. People are taken up in the same beams of light as the animals, but they're returned alive with missing time, amnesia. And it was in conversations with people who had worked either in the military or intelligence who said, our best guess is that it is a genetic harvest to make all kinds of biological entities. Well, if that's true, then there's another huge body of questions. Why? For what? Why this Earth? Why surface life from this Earth? Why is it being harvested, including human sperm and ova? And when you realize that people who are working in the political paradigm of keeping the extraterrestrial biological entity story completely out of the public and the media, and they don't have the answers either. And they will come to somebody like me who's going out to the world, and they are intrigued by what I have put in books. They already know it exists, but they don't have the answers either. And that I've encountered many, many times.
From her viewpoint, I wanted Linda to explain, after all these years, why the secrecy?
Why the government of the United States decided all the way back to FDR, Truman was second, to have a policy of denial about everything related to extraterrestrial craft, retrievals, goes first, the first layer of reasons why. They wanted the advanced technology to get a superior position militarily with all of the human enemies on the planet. That was first. When they start getting the technology and they start making discoveries that applied to the Manhattan Project and the development of the atomic bomb led to lasers and so forth, then they have another agenda. They want all of this to become patented inside of American corporations to keep it out of the hands also of their human enemies. Well, you're a government and you realize, okay, we've tried to shoot these craft down because we want that technology. They retaliate by taking down power grids. They retaliate by taking planes out of the sky. They retaliate by vaporizing V-2 rockets. They establish that they have technology that is beyond anything that humans can muster. They're not taking over the world, but they're making it very clear. If we attack, there's going to be painful payback. That had to pull the government back, and they realize we're being manipulated with. Who are we dealing with? How many types? How many agendas? And what they found at the crash sites, in their own documents, bodies dissected as one would a frog, without defining if those dissected bodies are human, non-human, or animal. Animal parts found in the walls of a craft at White Sands. There's no control over what the non-human intelligences are doing. But do I think that there is a reason for anybody listening to feel great fear? No, because everything that has gone down, and it may be for many more than 5,000 years, if there's one thing that I could communicate to a public, it is whatever we're dealing with seems to want to use the life of this planet. What they're using it for, I cannot give solid answers. But as long as the planet is useful, I don't think it's fear. I think the fear is of governments who are trying to lock in a policy of eternal secrecy and erasure on the biggest story of all time, that our planet is being interfered with, interfaced with, and manipulated by extraterrestrial biological entities, to use the government's own phrase, in multiple types. And every human being on the planet is being told that we're alone in the universe. As a journalist, I find that hugely offensive. As a human being, I find that hugely offensive. And the whole goal of my work is just to keep trying to share facts, the best facts that I can possibly get, and hope someday this huge lie is finally cracked for good.
Dangerously close to the truth. The Naked Truth Revealed. Want more of The Naked Truth Revealed? Please subscribe, like, and share this video.